This is Mr. Dietrich. Hello, social studies teachers, parents, teachers of all kinds. Today we're talking about critical theory. So anyone can benefit from this video, not just social studies teachers, parents. You probably heard a lot about this. What's the weird stuff they're teaching in schools? I don't like it. I'll explain critical theory in very simple terms, so you'll understand what it is, why it could be bad, why it's maybe not so bad. Here we go. Critical theory is simply just a way at studying something. It's a different lens, it's a different perspective, seeing things differently. What's built on that idea. That is okay. We get alternative views on events or history. And it's okay to talk about this alongside the regular view of history. It's okay to look, but don't touch. The problem with critical theory is once people take these alternative views and try to apply them and try to force and create change. It's okay to have an alternative view about an event. You can look, but don't touch. Unfortunately, there's a lot of touching going on. We got to stop this. We got to simply go back to using critical theory in its original form of just another way at looking at events to understand them, maybe getting a more nuanced, thorough understanding, but not fully supporting an alternative theory and then taking that alternative theory and using it to demand some sort of change or to adjust things. Let's go further with critical theory. So simply, critique, that's the key word here. Like a movie critic or reviews of a product. You are looking at an event or history or a topic and you are going to criticize it. You're going to give it from your perspective, like an Amazon review, rather than maybe 100% objective, unbiased analysis. This is more subjective, maybe leans into a specific lens, maybe looks at things through a specific perspective or angle. Here's an example. So let's look at Washington crossing the Delaware. If we were to study this the traditional way, not the critical theory way, just give you the facts. Washington crosses the Delaware, surprise attack, defeats the Hessians, big win while the Americans were struggling, rallies the troops, helps win the American Revolution. Fact, 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 fact. What about if we were to study it through the lens of critical theory? We put on our glasses and take a different angle, a different perspective. We might see this as a bad thing. He attacked on Christmas. That is a sacred holiday. It was widely observed that armies do not fight on this day. He and his guerrilla warfare unit surprise attacked the Hessians, got a sneaky, dastardly win. That's not fair. Well, nothing's fair in war. Well, we have seen recently people be upset. You might say, oh, this is no big deal. But we could use this alternative lens to paint Washington as a bad guy. He attacked on a sacred holiday. He broke the rules, the norms of war. He's a bad guy. See, this, we are criticizing it. We're trying to develop a bigger, nuanced, maybe this gets somebody more engaged. You might say, it's an exaggeration. Well, in recent events, we've had guerrilla armies attack on sacred holidays, and that was frowned upon. So it's just something to look at. That's a way to approach it. So critique, critical theory. It's okay, as long as we don't go and tear down Washington statues. Unfortunately, what we have seen is we play around with these fun ideas, and then people use them as justifications to tear down Washington statues, and then put up Santa Claus statues now. So it's okay to look, but don't take it to the next step. That's dangerous. And unfortunately, this stuff was invented in the 20s, 30s, 40s, got a little bit more popular in the 60s, now 90s, still okay, but the last 20 years, they've turned it to the application. They've taken ideas like Washington's a bad guy, let's hate white people. So, whoa, hold on, how do we get there? But you do get there, and unfortunately you get there through critical theory if you are not careful. So look, but don't touch. And it might sound like why even mess around with this stuff? Well, there are plenty of times when students aren't engaged in social studies or other classes. And critical theory, having an alternative lens, taking a different view, bringing up the Christmas story right there, wakes people up, gets them excited, might encourage them on this day, and then every day further. But you have to be careful. You are playing with fire, as we have seen. People play with fire in the 90s. That fire spread, and now in the 2020s, people are taking critical theory and using it to justify all kinds of actions. That is scary. Look, but don't touch. For most teachers, you probably don't want to play around with this stuff. You really got to know the content. You really need to know your bases. You really need to know how to guide the conversations if you are going to play with this fire. You got to be like Smokey. You don't want to burn the forest down. So make sure you have done your homework and your research. But it's really just, again, a different way of studying a topic, studying through the critical lens. And that can be a various different types of lenses. And we'll talk about the different ways in which critical theorists look at things, or how you could present ideas in your classroom. But again, it's just simply being critical, looking at things differently, seeing things from a different point of view. What's that? What is that? Do you see a duck, or do you see a rabbit? Oh, now you see the rabbit. You see a duck? Oh, now you see the duck. It's a different point of view, and you can have a completely different understanding of an event with critical theory, and that's completely okay, as long as alongside the teacher is teaching the basic facts. You want to teach both. And when you're teaching both, you do have to realize that people are going to come away with a different view of history, and that's okay, as long as we don't take that alternative view and act on it. As long as students and Americans don't use this alternative critical, which obviously if it's critical to critique, it's against. And that's what critical theory sees everything as, against. It's all about power, us versus them, oppressor versus the oppressed. Critic, criticize, against. So these alternative theories, these different lenses of which to see things, is almost always going to be against some sort of norm, against some sort of regular structure. And it's okay to see it that way and understand it, but many people then are get a call to action. They want to be against and actually take out that power structure. They use their understanding, their new alternative theory, which is, harnessed or based in criticism. They use it to criticize and change government. They use this alternative view on gender or race, to criticize and be against whatever policy is at your firm, your business, to change things. Critical theory is okay. Look, but don't touch. Unfortunately, what we have seen in the last 20 years, what used to just be a fun way to study events, which maybe we were naive to believe that, has become a justification to usurp power, to steal power, to damage power structures, to change things at your workplace, to change things in your institutions, to change things in your schools, to change all the policies. They use as a justification their alternative view that may not be based in facts. Just because you see a duck doesn't mean it's not a rabbit, but they only see a duck. And so that's what they're going to use to justify it. There may be a rabbit too, but it doesn't matter. They have a new view. They feel confident and justified in their view. And so they change laws, they change policies. That's the problem with critical theory. And so for most, I would suggest you probably ought not play around with this topic. But for some of the higher, more advanced social studies teachers, go for it. Again, it's just a lens. This is a naive way of saying it because we have seen how critical theory has exploded and has been more than just looking at things through a lens. But the basic understanding of it is that it starts with just a way of looking at things, which is fine. And it's mainly to be critical and to criticize, to be against something, to attack something. And that kind of reveals a us versus them power structure, oppressor versus oppressed. And so you'll hear about critical race theory, in which events or social studies is studied and criticized with race as the major factor. Feminism, different gender theories in critical theory. We'll look at events and always see them through the lens of how are men oppressing women? And you build up all these different ways of viewing, and you study years and years and years of how men have oppressed women. That's fine, as long as you don't do anything with it. But unfortunately, what happens is if you study how men have tyrannically oppressed women. If you study for 30 years and teach for 30 years how the patriarchy controls women, over time, some of those people aren't just going to look at it. They're going to take that knowledge and say, we're going to do something about it. Classic Marxism, working class against the boss, proletariat, the bourgeoisie, us versus them, power structure, sees the world as rich versus poor, post-colonialism, Western world versus the developing world, a different way of looking at events, maybe not looking at the events through the heroes, through the winners of wars. What about the people that don't win wars? What about the people who have been colonized? What's their story? What's their truth? It's just a different way of analyzing events. Here's your classic intersectionality matrix, and it shows you your privileged group, or the oppressors, and at the bottom, the oppressors. And you read it for yourself. Race, gender, sexuality, wealth, disability, non-disability. And so what critical theory often does is it tells the story or views things through the oppressed point of view. Again, it's okay to share that voice. But when you see everything as us versus them, and then you take the next step of tearing things down, that's when we have problems. Another example of power versus privilege. Who's got it? Who wants it? That is intersectionality. That is critical theory. The guys without power are critiquing those with power. It's okay. It's fair criticism, as long as it's just criticism. But when you take it as the truth and then try to tear down everyone in your way and change the world, well, look, you want to change the world? Let's do it based on facts. You want to make positive change in this world? Let's do it based on universal truths that we all share, common culture that we all share. Let's not change the world based on skewed, biased, subjective points of view. You put your glasses on, now you want to burn everything down. You put your glasses on, you want to cancel and fire everyone. Hey, take the glasses off, buddy. Let's all see things the same way. And if we all see the same way, we can all make the same positive change. Critical theory can be really good about getting people excited, but you're playing with fire. You got to be careful. So look, don't touch, don't apply it. Thanks for joining me. Thank you, parents. Thank you, teachers. Like, subscribe, share. Get this video out there. Hopefully I explain critical theory in very simple terms. So yeah, you can be a little bit scared of it. Yeah, you can be a little bit excited about it. But now you know about it.